Hi, and welcome to Great Movie Scenes, the first series to talk about just that, great scenes from movies. Today, I am joined by somebody that is near and dear to my heart because I know him, I think, relatively well. James Madio, you would recognize him from Hook, The Basketball Diaries, and Brothers, which we're going to be talking about in just a moment. Nice to see you, James.
Good to see you too, Michelle. Thank you so much. Yes, we do know each other. We have worked together quite a bit and extensively in Northeast Ohio and hopefully in the future further.
I know. I hope so. I miss you now that you're out on the East Coast, but I know I'll be seeing you again, or I'll just pester you constantly with
Yeah,
emails, which I know you love.
same
No.
here. Yeah.
So today I wanted to talk to you about one of your favorite movie scenes. Can you kind of tell us what we're about to watch?
Right. So there's a lot going on with this scene. Well, first off, it's from Band of Brothers, and it's episode 9 called "Why We Fight," which is an extremely important episode in the miniseries. It's Easy Company men coming upon the concentration camps. Now you got to imagine some of these young men have been fighting for quite a while, almost up to 2 years and more, and maybe understanding like I need to defeat the Germans, but never understanding or seeing a concentration camp. And we'll get into the scene and we'll talk about the scene and with the producers and the directors and the writer and the actors, how we prepared and what we thought when we get into the nuts and bolts of this. But for me as an actor, and I'm doing this for quite some time, and I've had my up and downs like anybody else, when you are part of something as big as the Men of Easy Company and portraying a real life veteran, a war hero, and you get an opportunity for his family and his friends to see him up on the big screen in some sort of light, and an important light with an important message at an important time. There's nothing better as an artist. I mean, you just dream for that opportunity. You really do. So for me, this was a dream opportunity. So what you guys are going to see today, or right now, is episode 9 of Band of Brothers, Why We Fight. The Easy Company, Frank Bacanti, has a replacement attached to him, which is typical at this time of the war. You know, you lose people, they get hurt, they get injured, they die, and you're losing your friends in battle. And all of a sudden the next day you got some young, fresh-faced kid who's, trying to talk to you, and which you don't want to be fucking bothered because you're just thinking he's going to die tomorrow, not knowing what he's going to do. So you don't want to be friends, and that's sort of it. So this is Band of Brothers, episode 9, Why We Fight, directed by David Frankel and written by John Orloff.
Okay, here, let's take a look.
So when do you think we're gonna jump into Berlin, see some real action?
You in a rush?
No?
So what? You want to go home with a Congressional Medal of Honor or something?
Oh, I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, why don't you do us all a favor? Don't think. Damn replacements.
Esto sale mierda cagada. Hallelujah.
About time. Yeah, well, consider yourself lucky. Nixon was giving another current events lecture. So, tell me nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening. Couple of artillery rounds at dawn, probably from across the river, but that's about it. Spooktashy, though.
Here, Rocco just finished it.
Oh, yeah? Any sex in it?
Ain't that kind of book.
Hold it.
See ya.
Yeah. See ya.
Okay, move on. Easy.
Hey, O'Brien, relax, would you? I'm trying to read.
It's O'Keefe.
Is that right?
Yep. Patrick O'Keefe. My friends call me Patty.
Hey, O'Brien. Shut up.
I told you, it's O'Keefe.
Do you know why no one remembers your name? It's because no one wants to remember your name. There's too many Smiths, D'Amatos, and O'Keefes, and O'Briens who show up here replacing Toccoa men. That you dumb replacements got killed in the first place. And they're all like you. They're all piss and vinegar. Where the crowd's at. Let me at them. When do I get to jump into Berlin? 2 days later, there they are. With their blood and guts hanging out. And they're screaming for a medic. Begging for their goddamn mother. Them dumb fucks don't even know they're dead yet. Hey, you listening to me? Do you understand that this is the best part of fucking war I've seen? I got hot chow, hot showers, warm bed. Germany is almost as good as being home. I even got to wipe my ass with real toilet paper today. So quit asking about when you're gonna see some action, will you? And stop with the fucking love songs. When you ship out? A few weeks ago?
Yeah.
It's been 2 years since I seen home. 2 years. It's fucking war.
Okay, so now that we have watched that scene, when you told me this was a scene that you were going to pick, I was a little bit surprised, just because generally when I think of Band of Brothers, I do think a lot of the action, and this is one of the scenes where there's not action. This could be a scene that could have kind of been placed anywhere, because it's just two men having a moment and talking. Why did you choose this scene out of any of the others? Why was this the most kind of important to you?
Well, I mean, it goes back to what you just said, Michelle. Look, we can choose military and tanks and gunfire and battle, but I just felt like, okay, when I run into a lot of our military and ex-military, whether I'm in the airport or anywhere on a playground, and it doesn't happen often, but I'll get noticed. And they will say, "Hey, man, Frank Picanti, Band of Brothers." And I'll say, "Yeah, thank you, man. Pleasure." And they'll be like, "Well, I served." And I'm like, "Well, thank you for your service." And when they say, "Look, there was a scene in episode 9, you chewing out that replacement, and I just thought that was great, and it helped me get through certain times when I was stuck in, Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan, trying to get through a moment, and I was living in a tent, and we couldn't sleep, so we'd watch Band of Brothers on repeat and your heart sinks, because you're like, I cannot believe that this series has impacted men and women to that degree. You didn't think you were going to wear that for the rest of your life, and it's almost like a medal, and a way to sort of serve this series and the men that we portrayed. So when this came up about what you want to show, everybody knows Band of Brothers when it came out in 2020, in 2001, I believe. It was ahead of its time for sure, with everything. So, and it was ahead of its time mainly, well, not mainly, for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons was the gunfights, the firefights, the tanks, just everything, special effects. But for me, when you're working on something for 10 months and all of a sudden month number 8 or 9 comes around and you read the script, and there's these incredible moments that you have that represent Frank Bricanti, and it's a little mini monologue with a replacement that's touching home. You have said to yourself, this is all I need. Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the family and the friends and the relatives can kind of go, the guy in the foxhole, choose that the replacement, that's my great-grandfather. Well, that's my great-uncle. So you were hoping for throughout the series for a moment, because so many great actors, I mean incredible actors. Michelle, the best of the best. no matter what level you're on, no matter how many lines you had were involved in this series. And not just actors, everybody in pre-production, post-production, and behind the camera. It's just an amazing, amazing job. But when you finally get something to chew on like that, you wanted to chew on it. So the reason why I chose this is because of the dynamic of it, because I think what we're going to talk about right now can really lend itself to every aspect of filmmaking. And I mean, it's going to lend itself to actors mostly, but of how the communication between director, writer, actor, and the actor you're working with can come together to create something that's memorable without fucking it up,
Yeah.
throwing your ego out the window, and working together on something. So episode 9, Band of Brothers wasn't shot in sequence for a lot of reasons, but episode 9 was maybe shot 7-8 months in. Each episode was a month, so you would think that'd be month number 9, but it wasn't. I think it was month number 6 or 7, for a lot of reasons. But we won't get into that. That's sort of producer stuff and technical stuff. So when I finally received a script as an actor on this show, you immediately, when you got your script, you went through. You wanted to see if you were involved, if you're heavily involved in this episode, how much you had going on, and just get ahead of the game. So when episode 9, written by John Orloff, came, I was excited immediately because Frank Briganti was littered all throughout this script. And my first impression was, thank God. And I know it's going to seem like, oh, you're just saying it to say it. But this project was different. You got to know that and understand this project was different. When you saw yourself having this much action and this much play in the series, because you spoke about the veterans and you knew what you needed to do, you were excited for the reasons not typical of your actor, not for screen time. And I mean this. You were excited because you knew that him himself, Frank, was alive, and his family members would see him on the screen. And that was the most important thing, is for the family members to recognize what they've done, what their relative has achieved, and why they did it. All right, so when I read it, I was extremely excited. And when that specific scene came up, I remember having conflicted thoughts. And one was, oh my God, I'm going to go in there like a savage. And episode 9, Frank Briganti's been doing this for 2 years, hasn't seen his kid, haven't seen his wife, and I'm just going to kind of go in there and I'm going to pin this replacement, put my knee in my elbow in his chest, and it's the best part of fucking what I've seen, you understand? I was going to attack him. And then the other thing was, let me be open to our director. We had a new director every episode. So David Frankel was our director for episode 9. And you want to make sure that you respect and honor the director's choices and what they see. But because the actors have been doing this for long, this project was different. Directors would literally come up to you and kind of say, okay, I feel like the newbie. I know you guys went through boot camp. I know you represent and you're in charge of a certain group of men in your platoon. So let's work together. They wanted to work together. It wasn't your typical, I see this, you're the actor, and here's what you're going to do. Hit your mark here, go there, go there. The way they worked together was unique, and that's what made that show special. So when rehearsal started, this fresh actor in episode 9, he didn't work with us for 6-7 months. And the producers told us, treat the replacements like the replacements. Like, don't feel like you need to make them feel like, hey, let's rehearse. Let's kind of, hey, you like a cup of tea? Yeah. It wasn't like that. It was, you fucking treat them the way they need to be treated. So a lot of actors weren't prepared for that. The actors that came in for episodics, came in for one episode. And Matthew Hickey, great actor, good guy. And he showed up on set, and I don't want to do this to him, but I immediately I'm a dick. He wants to rehearse. He wants to do all this shit. And I'm like, go there, get the fuck away from me. And he must have been like, I've never worked with a more asshole of an actor.
Gosh.
And you don't want them to know this, but on the day, but in the inside, I'm going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this to this young man who is probably in shell shock. I got an episode of Bill. I think he was in a few episodes after that, but I finally got my big gig on Band of Brothers, and you get there, and the actor you're meeting was like, fuck you, I don't want to rehearse over there. So it probably wasn't a great experience for him. And I've heard a lot of actors who had, came in for an episode or two in Band of Brothers will say it was my worst experience as an actor. And for me, as one of the main characters or someone who was throughout the series, I go, good, I did my job. That's what I was told to do. So on set, Matt was there and David was there. We rehearsed the scene a little bit. And I told the director that I want to physically grab him and pin him, put my foot in his neck and, smack him, maybe hit him. And we rehearsed a little bit and I'm telling Matt. And, I could tell David was a little bit like, okay, all right. He was giving me the fishing line. He was letting it go. But I could tell that he was just letting me kind of feed him some, chin music. And then at the end, he's like, okay, well, look, let's do that. I think, there's an opportunity to do that. And I think for the purpose of what we're trying to do, if that's who Frank is, we should do that. And I'm kind of trying to figure out where he's going with this. And he goes, but if you don't mind, I'd like to have a few opportunities to do what I feel like would be a different way. And I'm like, well, all right. He's like, well, I don't think you touch him. I don't think you move across the foxhole. And I don't think you lay a finger on him or do anything. And I'm like, no. He's like, okay, well, let's do a take or two rehearsal your way, and then we'll do mine for safety. I'm like, yeah, great, no problem. And then as we started rehearsing, then we finally started doing the take, it started to dawn on me that David was right. That Frank Vacanti, after 2 years, is not the type of guy. He's a very nice guy, Roman nose, comic, comedian type guy. And I'm not saying he enjoyed his time there, but he got through it, and he wasn't the type of guy to pin a replacement and hit a replacement and curse at a replacement and do all that. And that's kind of what David Frankel, the director, got to by the end of doing 10, 12, 15 takes.
So, okay, so I mean, you obviously were all on I'm assuming a strict schedule because there was a lot that you had to cover. There was a lot of different locations, just a lot going on. How many takes of that scene did you get? Do you remember?
I don't remember. The luxury of a production like that is you have a lot of cameras.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm sure 3 cameras were set up. So you get them from all different angles. So, if I had 10, 15 takes, that was a lot from different angles throughout it. And then they move on to the next scene. But that's kind of all you had.
Well, I remember watching like a making of thing about Band of Brothers, and I remember seeing like all of you guys in like this hangar where you're like jumping out of the planes and stuff like that. So there was obviously a lot of physical things that you needed to prepare for. Did you ever have any kind of, I know this sounds strange, but like emotional boot camps? Like, did you ever just like hang out, talk about stuff, or was it a lot of physical and then you just went into the work and you built the relationship from physical?
Look, absolutely. I mean, you call it an emotional boot camp, but yeah, we had a boot camp, a 2+ week boot camp, pitting us together, trying to figure out our relationship, our roles, and our egos, our personalities. And one of the best things that ever happened to that production was during boot camp. A lot of us had a hard time because we were actors, and when you come in and you put into a real boot camp, you can't touch, you can't call anybody, you can't do anything, you can't dress up and go out for Europe. You got your toiletries in the green bag, and you get a haircut, and you're stuck in the fucking barracks. I mean, we knew what we were getting into, but to some degree, it started to weigh on a lot of us. But Tom and Steve came in toward the end and gave us this sort of pep talk and let us know why we were doing this. And I'll never forget it. It was pretty much both of them explaining us and instructing us and commanding us to throw your ego out the window, man. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the man that you're portraying. And once we heard that, that was the switch that turned. And you tried not to complain about shit. And not that we did, but the boot camp was just, an incredibly designed, perfect opportunity for these young men, and now I call them my friends and my brothers, to bond and know our mission at hand, which was to represent these men in the best light that we can. And not just those men. I don't want to say Easy Company, the Band of Brothers, but every World War II veteran. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of companies. There's a lot of men that did incredible special things, not just Easy Company. And Easy Company men would tell you that, hey, we just got lucky that our story was told. Yeah, and inside they'll look at you and kind of go, but we were the best. But every company thought they were the best
Yeah.
in World War II.
Well, I mean, and when I can't imagine what getting the notice of like, hey, you've been cast. You know, and any actor, like their stomach drops, they get excited and all this other stuff. But how did this land with you when you realized the weight of, oh, I'm portraying a man who's still alive, who's a war hero, like that it must have felt like a huge responsibility.
You know, Michelle, you say it like that, and I wish I could go back in time. I wish I can go back in time. I don't remember much about my past, but I do remember a lot about Band of Brothers, because you tend to remember the good and forget the bad in your life. But that whole experience, the people I met, everything from the subject at hand to the traveling, to the beaches, to the premieres, to the sets, to the veterans, to their families. It's a very, very, very special project. So when you cast, you don't know that's all about to come. You think, hey, I'm in a Spielberg film. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, because that's what you're gunning for as an actor, right? Like, I want to be famous. And then you're immediately put in place about what this project is and how it's going to change and affect your life in a different kind of way. And that's exactly what it has done. And that's why that speech by Stephen and Tom at that time in boot camp was important, because it kind of let us know, because Tom's an actor, so he could kind of let us know personally what he's feeling and why this is different. And Stephen's a director that worked on big productions, and he can kind of go, look, guys, this is different, man. This is, it's not Hook. I mean, Hook was amazing. And Tom Hanks is going to tell you, look, it's not Forrest Gump. It's just different. This is not Batman. This is not Robin. It's not He-Man. This is fucking Frank Perconte. This is a real life hero who fell from the skies and liberated these small little towns in Normandy and gave people back their freedom. It's different. You know, you don't get an opportunity to do that. It's so, and then going back, and not only that, that element's wonderful, but going back to these places with the veterans was an entire different animal that none of us, and I think I speak for a lot of the men, the actors, expected. That was the most impactful thing about this entire project, was meeting our veteran or a friend of our veterans or family and traveling back to these battlefields, to these cemeteries, to these memorials, and going through those. That, I cannot tell you, I can live for the rest of my life going back to those places and visiting them and seeing the impact of what the Americans did on their soil.
Yeah.
The bravery and the sacrifice.
I mean, it kind of brings a whole new meaning to what it means to be an actor, because I think a lot of times, maybe more so like the younger generations who grew up and they're seeing a lot of Marvel films, and no knock against Marvel films, but you know, it's more fantasy based. It's, you know, this kind of like fantastical world that you could only dream and imagine of. This is something that happened, that was raw, that was gritty, that was visceral, that was in your gut. And it's, like you said, his family is watching this. It has more of an impact than just, oh, I'm going to see a movie for entertainment. Like this, it leaves a mark. And I could only imagine what kind of, you know, lasting impact that it would leave on you. But I mean, I remember the reviews coming out, because I watched it when it first came out, and I watched it again when I first started taking classes with you. And honestly, I did not realize the amount of talent that we've come to know that came out of Band of Brothers, of like Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, Tom Hardy, like all of these guys that we now have seen, you know, they've kind of boomed. Like that was their first big
Those are
movie.
the exact guys that we bullied on set because they came in for an episode or two. So they probably had fucking awful experiences. We
Nice.
got Tom Hardy, James McAvoy. Well, Fassbender was great. I loved Fassbender because Michael lived on top of a bar.
Oh,
He was just starting out. And when we would rap, we'd go hang out with him and go right downstairs to his bar. And it was fucking great. Uh, Tom Hardy was fantastic as well. You know, he was, I remember him, he was very, very raw, tough. Tough. He wasn't like a lot of people came onto Band of Brothers and got fucking mowed down. Like you were like, holy fuck, I'm low on the pecking order because there's a lot of guys that'll fuck me up. You know, Tom Hardy came all a little piss and vinegar, and you know, but at the same time, I'm sure if you speak with him or if you ever do, he'll kind of go, "Fuck, man, that wasn't easy." You know, you had Colin Hanks, Tom Hanks' kid,
Yeah.
McAvoy. There's a lot of great, great actors, and you know, even all the American, all the guys that came, you know, the Matthew Settles, the Ian Baileys, the Neil McDonoughs, the Donnie Wahlbergs, the Ron Livingstons, the Rick Gomez's, the Scott Grimes, the Richard Spades. As you know, I know fucking every one of them. Like I could keep on going, man. I mean, there's so many. I mean,
Well, this
Frank
is,
Hughes is
if you
my
see in the
brother.
background, that is a New Kids on the Block toy from my childhood. So yes, Donnie Wahlberg, I love
Great.
you.
That was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an important series, and more than ever now. I mean, it's amazing that everything that's going on in our country now and across the globe. And you know, you think about World War II and what the nation went through, and what every nation went through, and now you look at where we are today, and this is, I would say, you know, you can't sort of say which is bigger or worse or whatever. Or which one, you just can't do that. But what you can say or hope for is that people can rally together and band together as a country to be better, to try and understand each side, and to, you know, to hope that we get through this, because it's not easy, everything that we're going through right now in this country.
Well, I won't ask like anything too personal,
Mhm.
but do you, because I think, I mean, this is how I took it. Do you think it was a coincidence or some kind of divine intervention that that miniseries came out in 2001? Do you think it was something that we needed at that time?
Well, you know what happened, right? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the miniseries came out September 9th, Sunday, September 9th.
Mm.
And that Tuesday, just Tuesday, 2 days later, September 11th, 9/11, obviously. So, and no one cared to watch TV. We all glued to the television and to the news to figure out what's our next step as a country, and how we all came together, and how firemen and police and first responders were the fucking heroes, were the heroes. And today now they struggle to be that because it's just different. And that's how quick times can change. But we, I think at some point the series started to click. I know there were a couple of firehouses calling themselves the Band of Brothers, and because they're watching the series, and there was a moment we were at Rick Gomez's wedding in Sonoma. He was going to cancel his wedding like a week after 9/11 because all flights were down, and his own parents and family couldn't get there. So we drove, a lot of the Band of Brothers actors drove to his wedding. We wouldn't miss it for the world. And I was one of them. And I drove with Richard Spade, who played Mark, and his girl at the time. I don't think they were married. And we all bunked in this house. It's like house. And we turned the TV on when we got there because everybody wanted to know what was going on 9/11, like you did. So the minute we all got there, we all picked up bedrooms and crashed where we were going to crash. We turned the TV on. And there was a firefighter who was filled with soot and despair, and he just seemed like God, man. He just seemed like he was just, in the mix, everything that we know, everything that we saw. And he says something while he's being interviewed. And I remember we're all sitting there, all the Band of Brothers actors, remember, are sitting there together at our friend's wedding that's going to happen tomorrow. And a lot of people aren't going to be there because they can't travel in. So we drove from LA to Sonoma. A firefighter came on and talked about everything that was going on. He goes, look, I don't know if you guys have watched that series, Band of Brothers, but that's what we feel like. We're like a band of brothers, and we're going to get through this. And I just remember looking at some of the other actors kind of going, how the fuck, like, what is going on? Like, I can't believe that this firefighter. And from then and there, you just knew that later on, maybe not that day, that the series was going to be something special because how much it meant to him and the timing of it and a country rallying around each other and our first responders. And it's just like, you just wish that fucking series would come out today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, and you hear things all the time about actors, getting a script and then they cling to it, they love it, but with editing and directing and stuff, like they don't know what the final outcome is going to be. So, I mean, I'm assuming that all you guys got the script, these big names that are attached to it, it's going to be this big deal, it's going to be, it's going to be, you hope it's going to be great, but you had no way of knowing how it was going to land with an audience, especially around 9/11, especially with a lot of the people who you're portraying still being alive, family members seeing it. I mean, can you just kind of talk about the process a little bit of making it versus what life was like after it was done and you watched it? I mean, you lived it and then you're seeing it. I mean, obviously you're proud of it, but I mean, did you have any idea what kind of impact it could have possibly?
Like, here's the deal. It depends what kind of impact what you see, right? Because there's a couple different factors into that impact. There's the impact in America. There's the impact of the American soldier. There's an impact of our industry. There's an impact of overseas. There's an impact of these small little towns that were liberated and actually specifically targeted, like Carrington and St. Mary East, and what happened to those towns after Band of Brothers. So I'll try and go through it in each way. As an actor, and as what the actor went through it's great. You thought it was going to open up a lot of doors as an actor, and you're going to audition like crazy, and you're going to work, but you realize that this job was special, that it was a little bigger than you as an actor and what's going to happen in your career later, and the responsibility of representing these men overtook the thought of what it can do to my career. And I think a lot of the Band of Brothers actors thought that as well. And the friendships that we have gained and bonded will just be cemented in our lives forever. On our soil, like in America, I think it shows the home of the free, land of the brave, and why America is called upon and what we did and what we sacrificed during that time, in my opinion. I think it represents the true American soldier, and it's fucking wonderful and mind-boggling to walk through an airport and see 4 or 5 men and women in uniform waiting to go to wherever they're going. You see them, we all see them in the airports, and they see you before you see them, and they tap you on the shoulder. And they have something to say wonderful about the show and how, and you're like, oh, slow down a minute. Let me just, and this gives me the hairs on my hand, my arm go, why, like, the fact that you are telling me thank you when you're about to be deployed, that is, you can't, as an artist, as an actor, you just don't see that coming. You're fucking blindsided, Michelle. You're really blindsided. You're like, all right, thank you. Like, so that's the American soil element of it, and that's the acting soil of it. So you can imagine how the acting thing takes the backseat to that, right?
Yeah.
The acting thing takes the backseat to another thing. So when you're on foreign soil, and I've been back to all the battlefields that Easy Company went to, a lot of different battlefields in World War II and the invasion and cemeteries and monuments, like a lot. I can't tell you more than I could ever think of, and more than I can be very proud of and honored to have been to. Uh, but to go to a place that was occupied by Germans for 4 years, and then Americans fell from the skies and stormed the beaches and pushed the Germans out to give you back your freedom and liberate your town and give every mom back the bakery, dad back the farm, schools. To go back there with the man that you portrayed in this miniseries and to watch how they treat him and how they respect him, how they look at the American soldier, angels from the skies. You can't, I mean, that's just, it really, Band of Brothers is an amazing project. I can't say it enough. You don't, no one could ever understand what it's done for the lives of a lot of us, as far as men, as far as understanding, as far as moving forward with decision making and respect and gratitude and understanding a global conflict and knowing what every single country went through during this when you get to travel through them. But it's very special to be a part of that, a small fraction of that. So now when you go to these towns, who before Band of Brothers was just a small little town, they had some people who were interested in World War II, Americans, everybody from all over the world went because they knew, they read the history books, they'd go. And then Band of Brothers hits. So now they got the tours, actors coming out there and going on tours. And with these tours, I guess I've brought an economic impact and helped rebuild some of these churches that were, blown up and some of these places that they go to between donations and these tours, I'd be able to rebuild a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily ever touched. I know there's a church in out there in St. Mary Glace I love going to, Ungerville, where these two medics were held. Well, that's where they, worked out of, and they treated German soldiers and American soldiers. And this small church, there's like, I think they call it a hamlet. There's only like 50 little houses in this hamlet. And that church before Band of Brothers was the church that you saw post-World War II, maybe just a little different. But most of it looks the same, Michelle. And now after the show, tours, donations, they were able to, redo the glass and redo a lot of it, fix it up. So, the series has done a lot in a lot of different ways. And
it seems like your relationship with Spielberg has also done a lot for you as well, because this was the third time that you worked with him, correct?
Well, it depends. The third time on one of his projects, but the second time in person. I mean, I did an animation show that I did.
Got it. Okay.
Animation, so I didn't see him. But yeah, Hook started my career, and Band of Brothers was nice, sort of, midway through it, sort of getting through the prime of my career with him. But yeah, I'm very blessed.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to know him and work with him and know his family as well.
Well, and I think it's amazing too, just to go back to the scene that we saw specifically, is that there's a lot of little nuance that I caught in the scene that I don't know necessarily if people who are not Irish American or Italian American would catch, but just the fact that you kept calling him O'Brien, it's just like this kind of this, butting heads that we do in America of Irish and Italians, but just little things like that I think just it made the scene just so relatable.
For actors, you need to understand, for you acting heads out there right now, there's quite a few mistakes in that scene as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So those guys in the 1940s didn't drop the F-bomb as much as Frank Perconti dropped the F-bomb in there. And I'm not proud of that. You don't recognize that till later. We were told, we got a memo sometime in production saying, you got to tell these actors to stop improvising with the F-bomb. And some of us did. And sometimes when you're in a heated moment and you're from the Bronx, it came out. so you look at stuff like that, and you wish that you can go back and change that, but you couldn't. So there's everything in that scene is not perfect. The O'Keefe or whatever his name is, I know it's O'Keefe now, but I didn't know what his name was on the day. I really didn't. Like I said, they just you just didn't pay attention to that.
Mm.
It's just something. It wasn't the first thing that you were worried about, was honoring this replacement's name. I mean, that there's a real O'Keefe out there, or was out there, who did come in at that time and spent time in the war, even though maybe he wasn't in Bastogne or Market Garden or Normandy, but he spent time there. And his family has seen this series. And he has seen an actor and a character, a war hero named Frank Briganti, sort of throw shit at him. So, you want to be careful of that, because this, at the end of the day, this man was still in a war.
Yeah.
He's a war hero.
Yeah.
And, for me now today, I kind of just, I try and justify that with like, hey, this just script element of it, just trying to get our audience to understand the consequences of war and the relationships of war. And Frank's been there for a long time, and you're just not going to tolerate a young replacement coming in and starting talking about, like, when are we going to see action?
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and I think, just not to blow up your ego, but I mean, like, no, there was
I
like
need it right now.
there was a like a tired anger, because you're obviously angry, but it was also just like, I can't, so I mean, I think that the duality of those two emotions, I came across very, very well. And I think that's not something that we always think about when we think about soldiers. I mean, we think about, like, they're always like buff,
Yeah.
ready to go, or we see, the aftermath of PTSD. We don't see the kind of in between of straddling that line. So, I mean, I do think that was an important scene to show and to talk
Yeah.
about, because it's not talked about enough.
In the timeline of it, these guys would see in the end, and they felt like they've defeated the Germans, and their main objective was not to get hurt, not do anything stupid, and get home. So when you were assigned a replacement, you would just, if they fired a weapon, a sniper could know. So there was so many elements, save your life elements going on. You didn't really want to be assigned with a replacement. So I have to imagine that was why the producers and directors were trying to get that across, is how different someone is 2 years from a fresh-faced person coming at the end of the war. Am I going to get to see a German? Motherfucker, I said for 2 years. So that got across. I think that's why the importance of that scene, I mean, it's why we're talking about it today. And as an actor trying to hopefully translate that, a fraction of that, I know there's probably a lot of men and women out there that can, look at this and kind of go, well, you're still an actor, and that's kind of what you did. And I get that. I totally get that. But
I think it's a difficult line to straddle, because a
is.
lot of times in acting class, you play sad, you play angry, you play happy. Very rarely are you playing something in between, or you're playing a fraction of angry and a little bit of tired. It's definitely not easy. And I think that it's not, I don't think it's easy to play, but I also think it kind of showed more of what you as an actor were going through, because you've been on that set for months. You're showing what Perconti was going through being there for 2 years, and it's just kind of showing something that's real, because you're not always 100% all the time. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of like a really good a really good scene to show that the complexity of war. It's not all, fighting all the time, and it's not always tears all the time. Sometimes it's in between.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that these guys are about to stumble on the concentration camps and the relationship between them throughout that episode, and how it changes toward the end, is is very important as well. So, that's why I chose it. I mean, I could have chose a lot of other scenes, but there's just so much depth and so much truth and so much behind that in regards to the project itself and the men themselves and the topic and where they were. Uh, I could talk about being a lost boy in Never Neverland. I think that's fun too. But I think that just deserves a little more wine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
More
I
like,
think so.
a little more bangarang. Let's have a food fight, which is fun too. That's Neverland.
Yeah,
That's fake and that's real. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking with me and choosing this scene. I like I said, I've watched the series a couple times, and I do like to revisit every now and again, just to kind of, it's one of those pieces where you every time you watch it, you pick up something new.
yeah,
And just
true,
because
very true.
yeah, I mean, it's so full of content, and and when you watch it at different times in your life too, just things kind of take on a different meaning. So this was really important scene to talk about, and I'm really glad that I got to talk to you.
Well,
So thank you again for tuning in to Great Movie Scenes, the first series to talk about that. Great scenes from movies. Thanks again to our amazing guest, James, and I am your host, Michelle, and I look forward to seeing you next time.